There's a moment when he's inside you, not just physically, but emotionally wide open. And in that fragile electric space, one line can change everything. Say the right thing, and he'll never forget you. When a man is inside you, he's not just seeking pleasure, he's subconsciously searching for connection, meaning, and depth. In that raw moment, words hold the power to pierce through flesh and bone, right into his soul. Say the right line, and it echoes in his mind for years. Today, we're diving into the exact kinds of words that leave a permanent imprint. There's a reason why certain moments never leave a man's mind, why some women live rent-free in the corners of his memory for years, even decades. It's not just about how they looked or what they did, it's about how they made him feel. And when you're inside that most intimate, raw moment with him, when you're locked together in the deepest act of physical union, what you say matters more than you think. It's in that exact moment when the world disappears and he's not thinking about deadlines, expectations, or disappointments that your voice can enter his bloodstream like a drug. When you say something like, "I want to feel every part of you right now," you're not just talking about physical sensation. You're issuing a command to his soul. You're declaring your desire fully, unapologetically, without shame or hesitation. And in doing so, you break every script he's been conditioned to expect. Most people go through sex like sleepwalking, habit, performance, ego. But when you drop a line like that, with fire in your eyes and presence in your tone, you bring him back to consciousness. You rip him out of autopilot. That line slaps away the fog and brings him into the now, into you. And this is where it becomes powerful. Most men are starving for presence. They live distracted. They are always being pulled in 1,000 directions. But in bed with you, he can find something most men can't name but deeply crave: focus. You become the lightning rod, the grounding wire, the reason his breath shortens, not from effort, but from emotional overload. When you say, "I want to feel every part of you right now," it tells him that you're not elsewhere, you're not comparing, you're not pretending, you're in it. And you're demanding the same from him. That line bypasses his defenses. It tells him he doesn't need to impress you with moves or mastery, he just needs to be fully there. And that, ironically, makes him perform better, not for applause, but for truth. It's no longer about roles, it's about reality. He begins to feel your energy as permission to let go, to let the moment own him, not just stimulate him. And more than the physical connection, it's the emotional honesty of that sentence that leaves the deepest imprint. Because you didn't just moan or whisper sweet nothings. You declared something sacred. And men don't forget the sacred. That line delivered from your core becomes a timestamp in his memory. He may forget the date, he may forget the room, but he won't forget the moment, that one moment where he felt completely claimed, not just used. There's a kind of power in a woman who can speak her desire without shrinking. It rewires a man's expectations of intimacy. It sets a new standard, one where he's not just there to perform, but to experience. And he'll chase that experience, consciously or not, again and again, because in a world where so many interactions feel shallow, transactional, or empty, your voice offered depth. It gave him meaning. And here's the secret most never talk about. Men don't just want to be wanted physically. They want to feel important, not in an arrogant way, but in a "this moment matters" kind of way. And your words gave him that. Your voice turned the room into a sanctuary, the act into a ceremony, and him from a man seeking pleasure into a man finding truth. He'll go through life facing noise, distraction, and superficiality, but that one sentence, that laser-focused, soul-soaked whisper, it becomes a compass, a reminder, a standard, a fantasy that no performance can recreate. Why? Because it wasn't just sexy, it was real. You gave him a line that became a memory, and you did it without needing anything but your truth. That is unforgettable. That is what burns into the mind of a man, not because it stroked his ego, but because it fed his hunger for connection, his longing to feel fully alive, even just for a moment. And for that, he will remember you. There is a primal hunger inside every man, a need so deep, it often goes unspoken, even to himself. It's the need to feel chosen. Not just desired, not simply accepted, but chosen above all others. In a world where masculinity is constantly questioned, where men are compared, measured, and told to compete, there's something soul-altering about hearing a woman, in the most intimate moment of all, whisper with conviction, "No one has ever made me feel like this." That sentence doesn't just stroke his ego. It nourishes a wound most men carry silently, because whether he admits it or not, he wonders. He wonders if he's enough, if his presence matters, if he's different from the men who came before him in your life. And in the moment he's inside you, when your bodies are already saying what mouths often can't, that one line wraps around his psyche like a sacred vow. You've just told him, without ceremony or performance, that this exact connection is unlike anything before. And in that second, he becomes not just a man in your bed, but the man in your life. This isn't about manipulation. It's about speaking to his core, the part of him that wants to be unforgettable, not because of what he does, but because of who he is. You're not complimenting his technique, you're crowning his presence. And the power of that cannot be overstated. You see, most men move through the world in silent comparison, measuring their worth by how much money they make, how strong they are, how admired they become. But even the most externally confident man questions whether he is truly unique to the woman he shares himself with. So when you look into his eyes, with your voice trembling from honesty and not performance, and you say, "No one has ever made me feel like this," you do something almost divine. You separate him from every shadow, every ghost, every insecurity. In that breath, he's not competing anymore. He's not chasing approval. He's arrived. He is the one. And not because he demanded it, but because you gave it freely. What's remarkable is how deeply this line lingers. A man may forget compliments. He may forget the exact curve of your body or the words of praise. But he will not forget the moment a woman made him feel irreplaceable. That line becomes an anchor, a memory tattooed beneath the surface of every future connection. Long after the night ends, long after your bodies have separated and your lives move on, that single moment will replay in his mind when he's driving alone, when he's lying in bed at night, or when he's staring at another woman, wondering why it doesn't feel the same. Because it won't. Because what you gave him wasn't technique, it was significance, and that's rare. When you speak that line, you're giving him something most people are too afraid to offer. Your vulnerability. You're admitting that he has an effect on you that no one else has ever had. And it's not because you're weak. It's because you're strong enough to tell the truth. You're powerful enough to honor a moment without needing to protect your ego. That is feminine strength at its highest level. And it pulls a man deeper than sex ever could. It pulls him into love, into devotion, into reverence, because in your words, he doesn't just hear praise, he hears belonging, he hears home. And here's what most women don't realize. Men remember who they feel safe with, but they worship the woman who made them feel chosen. That sentence, "No one has ever made me feel like this," becomes a sacred echo in his life. It shapes the way he sees you. It softens the way he touches you next. It plants a seed in his heart that says, "She's different, and I want more of her." Not because you tried to impress him, but because you honored him. You told the truth of your experience in a way that made him unforgettable. In that sacred moment, wrapped in your voice and your body, you gave him a kind of immortality. And for men, that's more erotic than anything else, more addictive than beauty, more binding than performance. You made him feel like the only man in the universe who could reach that part of you, And in doing so, you became the only woman in his world who ever made him feel like a king, not just because of how you treated him, but because of how you spoke to his soul. There is a quiet, transformative power in the moment a woman breaks the boundary between physical pleasure and emotional connection. When she says, while wrapped around him, eyes open, breath soft, "I feel so close to you like this," she isn't just offering affection, she's unlocking something sacred. For most men, sex and emotion are compartmentalized. Society, culture, even past experiences have trained them to believe that physical intimacy is separate from feelings, that arousal is about performance, not presence. But this one sentence, spoken at the exact moment when his walls are down and his soul is closest to the surface, disrupts that belief completely. It's as if your voice, soaked in truth and vulnerability, reaches into the silent spaces he doesn't even know exist and whispers, "This is more than just bodies, it's belonging." And that line is not dramatic, it's not scripted, it doesn't need flowers or fanfare. Its beauty is in its simplicity and sincerity. Because when a woman dares to connect love to lust in the middle of the act itself, she redefines what that act means. For a man who has likely spent years separating emotion from arousal out of self-protection or programming, that moment of emotional clarity can be soul-shifting. You're not just telling him he feels good, you're telling him he brings you closer to something deeper, something real. You're giving meaning to the moment, and meaning is what the masculine craves, beneath all the noise. He may have entered that space for release, for passion, for touch, but what he finds through that one line is relevance. He realizes in a flash of unspoken knowing that this isn't just sex, it's sanctuary. Think of how rare that is. How many people touch each other but never truly connect? How many couples share space, share heat, share time, but never share truth? And yet here you are, in the middle of the fire, offering not just your body, but your essence. You're saying, "This makes me feel safe, seen, held, human." And for him, that changes everything. Because once a man associates emotional safety with sexual closeness, he can never fully return to casual connection without feeling the ache of what's missing. You, in that moment, become the standard, the memory that every future encounter will be measured against. You become the woman who gave him more than pleasure. You gave him purpose inside passion. And here's where it deepens. That line doesn't make you weak, it makes you powerful. You've claimed the experience, you've directed the energy, you've turned what could have been a fleeting exchange into an eternal imprint. When you say, "I feel so close to you like this," you're not begging for affection. You're defining the intimacy. You're teaching him that you're not afraid to link heart to body. You're showing him that your softness is your strength, not your surrender. It's a level of feminine presence most men will only taste once and crave forever. This line also offers him something he's rarely given: emotional permission. In that space, he doesn't have to perform. He doesn't have to be rough or restrained or clever. He gets to just feel. And when a man feels emotionally safe in the arms of a woman who desires him, his natural instincts shift. He becomes more tender, more attentive, more attuned, because you've shown him that intimacy isn't about conquest, it's about connection. You've told him, in your own way, that this is a place where he doesn't have to wear armor. He can be raw, he can be real. And that level of freedom, that level of acceptance, that's what turns a moment into a milestone. Even more, this one sentence speaks to something larger than just the relationship. It speaks to legacy. When a woman connects sex to emotion, she plants the seed of emotional maturity in her man. She invites him into a new realm of masculinity, one where vulnerability isn't weakness, but depth. And that growth doesn't just affect your time together, it expands him as a person. He starts to seek that feeling again, not just with you, but in all areas of his life. He starts to realize that real connection doesn't diminish him, it completes him. So don't underestimate the line, "I feel so close to you like this." It might sound small, but in the middle of the most primal act, It becomes a bridge from sensation to soul. It ties the fire of lust to the warmth of love. It shows him that intimacy isn't just about getting inside your body, it's about earning a place in your heart. And that kind of access, that's unforgettable. That's sacred. That's the moment a man realizes he hasn't just found someone to touch. He's found someone who touches back, not with her hands, but with her truth. There's a line that doesn't just arouse him, it awakens him, not with sweetness, but with power. When you look him in the eyes, while he's fully immersed in you and say, I want all of you, don't hold back. You do more than turn him on. You liberate him. You give him permission to drop every mask, every restraint, every ounce of self-consciousness he's carried into the bedroom and into the world. That sentence said with conviction and clarity is not just an invitation, it's a challenge. It says, I see your full masculine force and I'm not afraid of it. In fact, I crave it. And that is a gift so rare, it almost feels mythical to a man, because most of his life he's been told to pull back, to be careful, to control himself. And yet here you are, a woman in full presence, saying the opposite. Give me your edge. Show me the part you usually hide. That kind of courage from a woman doesn't just seduce, it transforms. In that moment, you're not just a lover, you're a force. You become the mirror that reflects his full, raw masculinity and accepts it without flinching. You don't just tolerate his fire, you call it forward. That one line, spoken in the heat of passion, hits him deeper than moans or praise ever could, because it tells him, you're not here to play it safe. You're not here for rehearsed motions or polite intimacy. You want the whole of him, his breath, his weight, his noise, his dominance, his devotion, his chaos. And when a man feels that kind of invitation, something ancient stirs inside him. The protector, the warrior, the primal lover who doesn't just take but gives everything when he's finally allowed to be whole. Most men have never felt that. Most men don't even know they're craving it. But when they meet it, when they hear a woman say, don't hold back, everything shifts. Suddenly he's not operating from performance or pressure. He's offering himself from truth. And what he gives back is no longer filtered through shame or second guessing. He begins to meet you with equal presence, equal risk, equal surrender. Because now he knows this is not a woman who will shrink if he steps into his power. This is a woman who will rise with him. That's what that line really does. It sends a signal that you are not afraid of depth, of intensity, of being taken fully and still standing strong in your own center. That's not submissive. That's sovereign. And when you speak from that sovereignty, you give him a new experience of intimacy, one where there's no hierarchy, just mutual immersion. You're not asking him to dominate you. You're asking him to meet you where you are, fully present, fully alive, unguarded. That's what most people miss. This line doesn't just push him to be more powerful. It requires you to be fully powerful too. Because only a strong woman can handle the full presence of a man. Only a woman who knows herself can invite someone else to bring everything without losing herself in the process. And he feels that. He feels the anchor in your request. He senses that your courage isn't a performance, it's who you are. That's what makes this line unforgettable. Because long after the night ends, he'll think back to that moment, not because of how wild it was, but because of how real it felt. He'll remember the woman who didn't ask him to shrink or be soft or careful, but who dared him to come alive. And not just in his body, but in his soul. You gave him the rarest experience, freedom without judgment, expression without fear, passion without permission. You showed him that true intimacy is not about control, it's about trust. And that trust didn't make you fragile, it made you limitless. So when you say, I want all of you, don't hold back, you're not just shaping a sexual memory, You're shaping his belief about what love and passion can be. You're proving that it's possible to be both wild and safe, both vulnerable and powerful, both feminine and fierce. And once he's tasted that kind of energy from you, no imitation will satisfy him again. He'll remember not just what you said, but who you were when you said it. A woman unafraid of intensity, unafraid of connection, unafraid of him. And in that moment, he won't just love you more, he'll respect you more, he'll trust you more, and he'll carry that memory like a secret map to what real intimacy should feel like. There are certain words that don't just seduce a man, they summon something ancient inside him. And one of the most powerful among them is a simple, softly spoken truth. I feel so safe with you right now. That line may seem small, it may sound delicate, but to a man it hits like a thunderclap to the heart. Because more than praise, more than passion, more than performance, what many men crave, even if they never say it out loud, is to feel needed for their strength and trusted for their intentions. Not feared, not tamed, but safe to be strong. And when you say those words at the height of your most vulnerable moment, when your body and heart are open and he's inside you both physically and emotionally, it tells him that he has succeeded in the most meaningful way, not just in giving pleasure, but in providing protection. That line reaches into a part of his masculinity that is more spiritual than sexual. Because whether he's the silent type or the expressive one, most men are wired with a deep, sacred instinct to guard what they love. When you say, I feel so safe with you right now, you're not just complimenting his presence, you're affirming his purpose. You're telling him that his presence brings peace, that his body is not a threat to you, but a shelter, that the way he holds you, moves with you, breathes with you, makes you feel held, not just touched. And that experience for a man is transformational, because the world outside the bedroom often shames or distorts a man's strength. It tells him to be aggressive in business but gentle in love, to lead with power but never overpower, to be strong but not too strong. It's confusing, it's contradictory, and it leaves many men deeply unsure of what their strength is even for. But in that moment, with you underneath him or wrapped around him, when your voice trembles in sincerity and not fear, and you say, I feel so safe with you right now, you become the one voice that gives him clarity. This is what his strength is for. This is what it means to be a man with purpose. The emotional gravity of that line goes far beyond the moment itself. It begins to redefine his identity in your eyes. You're no longer just there for the physical act. You are bearing witness to his character. You're reflecting back to him the deepest masculine truth, that his strength is good, that his dominance is not a danger, and that his presence brings peace, not pressure. That kind of affirmation sticks to the soul. It creates a memory he will carry in silence long after the night ends, because in a world where so many men are unsure of their role, unsure of what women really want from them, you gave him an answer. You didn't ask him to be less. You celebrated the part of him he's often been told to hide. And once a man feels that kind of validation, everything shifts. You awaken in him a different kind of responsibility, not out of obligation, but devotion. He starts to look at you not just as a lover, but as someone he must protect, not because you are weak, but because he now sees the value of your trust. Trust is a sacred gift, and when you give it freely, in that vulnerable moment, his instinct is not to exploit it, but to honor it. He starts thinking differently. He holds you longer. He listens more closely. He becomes more attentive, more grounded, more committed, because you gave him the one thing every man longs for from the woman he loves. You gave him a reason to rise. And let's be clear, this isn't about playing a role or being submissive. This line does not mean you're dependent or fragile. In fact, it speaks to a higher form of strength, the strength to be open. To say, I feel safe with you, is one of the boldest, bravest things a woman can do, because it means you've dropped your guard. You've stepped into emotional nakedness. You've let him see the side of you that doesn't perform, that doesn't defend, that doesn't prove. And that, more than anything, melts a man's armor, because you're no longer giving him your body as a reward. You're giving him your trust as a gift. And a man who is ready for real intimacy will treasure that gift with everything he has. So understand this, when you whisper those words in the middle of the most intimate act, I feel so safe with you right now, you are not just deepening the moment, you are deepening him. You're helping him step into his highest masculine self, the part of him that isn't just strong for the sake of dominance, but strong in service of love. That is the man who will show up for you. That is the man who will remember you long after your clothes are back on. Because you weren't just another lover. You were the woman who trusted him enough to let him protect something sacred. You. There's a moment, often quiet, when the fire fades into a softer glow. When your bodies are still intertwined, your breath slowing, your hearts beginning to sink in a deeper rhythm. And it's in that precise moment, just before the world rushes back in, that a single sentence can mark a man forever. A line so deceptively simple, yet profoundly unforgettable. Don't forget this moment. You're not clinging, you're not asking for promises. You're speaking with a kind of grounded truth that doesn't beg, it declares. This happened, this mattered, this meant something. And because you said it in that space, that sacred space between climax and quiet, it lands in him with the weight of eternity. Men are trained to live in motion. They're trained to chase goals, crush tasks, move forward. But rarely are they taught to pause, to savor, to mark a moment in time as something worthy of reverence. That's why this one line, don't forget this moment, strikes like lightning in slow motion. It interrupts the unconscious drift of routine and anchors him in the now. Suddenly, he's not just inside a woman, he's inside a memory, a moment he's being told by someone he respects to remember. And memory is a powerful form of intimacy, because when you ask someone not to forget, you're inviting them to carry a piece of you long after the night ends. You're weaving your presence into the fabric of their future. This line carries weight because of when it's said. Right after the peak, when emotions are real, when guards are down, when the performance is over and only presence remains, in that window, everything feels more true. There's no room for pretense, just truth, vulnerability, and deep emotional resonance. And when you choose to speak into that space, what you say sticks. It doesn't matter if he's tough, logical, stoic, or emotionally reserved. At his core, every man remembers the woman who left him with meaning, not just memory. But let's be clear, this isn't about manipulating a man into attachment. It's about marking the depth of a shared experience. Don't forget, this moment is not a plea, it's a ceremony. It turns the act into something more, something eternal. It subtly communicates, this wasn't casual for me, this was real, and I trust it was real for you too. And that gentle assumption, that shared emotional expectation, draws him closer, because men are not used to being spoken to with such quiet certainty. They're used to either being idolized with superficial praise or challenged with demands. Rarely does a woman meet them in the middle with honesty that isn't trying to control, but simply express. When you say that line, it shows you have reverence for the moment. You're not rushing past it, and you're not reducing it to biology. You're telling him that what just happened reached deeper than skin, that in this world of distractions, your connection cut through the noise and created something worth remembering. And here's the secret. Men remember not just what you did, but how you made them feel. And this line tells him, you were fully here with me, and I'll remember that. And when he hears that, something in him shifts. You've given him an emotional timestamp. You've made the moment matter. And when something matters, it becomes sacred. That sacredness lives on. He'll be walking down a street months later, and suddenly the way your fingers traced his shoulder will rise in his mind. He'll be with someone else someday maybe, and still remember the night you looked him in the eyes and quietly said, "Don't forget this moment." Because no one else did that. No one else paused time. No one else wrapped intimacy in meaning the way you did. And whether he comes back to you or carries on with that echo in his soul, the truth remains you left a mark. Not out of desperation, not out of performance, but from the courage to speak something eternal. This line also speaks volumes about you. It shows that you live in the present, but you honor the long term. That you don't need to define everything, but you feel everything. It's a declaration of emotional intelligence, of spiritual presence, of womanhood that doesn't settle for shallow. And a man who is ready, truly ready, will feel that. He'll hold it. He'll treasure it. Because in a world where everyone is rushing, you were the one who stopped, who looked him in the eyes and invited him to remember. But don't be afraid to say it. Say it when your heart is full. Say it when your body is soft. Say it when you mean it without drama or demand. Just say it with truth. Don't forget this moment. Because moments like that build the emotional architecture of a man's soul. And long after the fire is gone and the memory fades in detail, the meaning remains. You didn't just share your body. You shared time, presence, and truth. And he'll never forget the woman who made him remember. When it's all said and done, when the lights dim, the sheets cool, and the world starts to reclaim your attention, what truly lingers is not the position, the pace, or even the intensity. It's the feeling, the energy exchanged in silence, the words spoken in stillness, the truths that found their voice when vulnerability stripped away the performance. That's what a man remembers, not because it flattered him, but because it transformed him. Because in those moments, you didn't just touch his body, you touched the most guarded parts of his being. You reached the boy who needed to feel chosen, the man who needed to feel respected, the soul that wanted to feel seen. In a world where so many encounters are forgettable, rushed, or transactional, you became unforgettable, not because you tried to be, but because you chose to speak from truth. You used your voice like a flame, soft enough to soothe, strong enough to shape, and that voice, wrapped in real presence, made him feel something he likely didn't even know he was aching for, to be felt, known, and remembered. You see, true intimacy isn't just what happens between bodies. It's what happens when two people dare to bring their full selves into the moment. When masks fall, when walls collapse, and when words become more than sounds, they become anchors. Anchors that ground him to you, to the moment, to the meaning. So speak bravely. Don't whisper just to please. Speak to awaken. Speak to mark him. Use your voice, not just to arouse him, but to expand him. Because when a woman brings emotional depth into physical passion, she doesn't just give pleasure, she gives legacy. And in the years to come, no matter who he's with or where life takes him, there will be a memory he cannot shake. The woman who, in the most vulnerable, raw, and sacred moments, said something that made him feel everything. That woman, that was you.